Our next guest is a physio and the CEO of Biosymm. He's been wrangling health in mining for 20 years now. He leads a team of 160 plus pros across nearly 50 mine sites. He's here to show us how workers are the real safety experts and how to mine their knowledge with tech and consultation. Please make welcome Greg Borman.
All right. So look, we're going to have a bit of a chat today about manual or musculoskeletal disease, but more so from a perspective of how we can create an environment where a business is going to actually enact change. We're not going to focus as much on the research, but probably just more on how we can take a business through that process to try to get an outcome. I was listening to Jody this morning, talk about when they started looking at the tool that La Trobe were working on, and thought back to where I was at that time in 2006, and I was on a mine site where we were still able to wear short sleeve shirts, shorts. We were using glasses because the sun was glary, and it was a very different environment. But businesses do change, and they continue to change over time and evolve, and it's a much better place now than it used to be, but it can still be better. Here's some of the businesses that we do work with. I'd just like to put a big thank you out to Newmont, who have allowed us to talk about our shared experience with them over almost the last decade, particularly working down at Boddington and at the Tanami sites. Like we've heard from a few people today, obviously musculoskeletal disease is quite a big problem. There's no surprises there out of the information we've already heard, and there's nothing on these slides that are different to what you have seen. Our experience is that shoulders and hands are probably the most common things that we do see, but the low backs in particular are probably the ones that last the longest and take the longest to recover from. The thing about mining that's different, and that's different to some other workplaces, is that it's pretty varied. Every role, there are a lot of different roles on a mine site. We've heard a couple of experiences already around mining and particularly some of the areas, a person working in production, for example, where they're driving a haul truck for 12 hours a day, or an excavator or a grader, is going to be quite different in terms of what they're exposed to someone working in a fixed plant or a processing type environment. Maintenance roles can be different as well. We're looking at a light vehicle maintenance versus heavy vehicle versus processing plant. They're all different risk factors that people are exposed to. And the key thing, if you're going to try to engage a workplace and particular leader in a work area, is not to go in there talking about a general idea of what the risk might be, but you've actually got to spend some time in that area to understand it and to go there with some information that's pertinent to them, because you'll lose them very quickly if you don't show that you've actually taken some time to understand what the risk profile might be. That's what they're working with every day. I think we've seen this slide a few times talking about how to achieve change, and it is a really important slide because it does anchor us to a process. But I think the circle around the process is the most important part. Some of the people in the room that have worked with us in the past will know this sort of story, but this is one that we talk about with our team when we come in, and it's one around what we learn in business. And this is one lesson that we learnt some time ago. We spent a lot of time trying to understand tools. We came up with and tested lots of different tools to be able to go and assess risk. And we assessed lots of risks. We were at a time, from a physio perspective, just getting an opportunity to get out and get dirty, and we were getting pretty excited by that. And so we went about trying to get into the workplace and assess a lot of tasks. We had an impact on safety performance, and I think at the time, looking back now, it was just because we were visible. We were out there, we were in the workplace, we were having conversations, and so that drove safety down, or safety up, injuries down. But we didn't really know what we were doing. We got to the end of a period of time where we were giving ourselves high fives. We thought we were doing a great job because we were measuring our success on the amount of things that we assessed. But we weren't making a difference. And so we made a pretty key decision at that point from a business perspective to change what we measured, and it was tough. We said at the end of a year, we're not going to measure how many things we assess anymore. We're only going to measure when we actually get a change to occur, when a business will invest in a change. And so we went from feeling really good about ourselves to probably for 18 months, 2 years, we felt pretty ordinary. But we had to learn, and we had to learn how to sell risk. And if there's one thing that I'd like you to take away from today, with all of the tools and the information that you've got in here, to enact change, we need to be better at being able to sell the risk to the workplace and to get people to engage in making meaningful change as a result. So after we did that, over the last decade, we've been able to achieve more than 3,500 changes to businesses as a result of the work that we've been doing. Last year, we had 412, our record so far. And we're going to talk about what we lent into in order to be able to create that change. And really what we lent into is something that businesses are quite good at. They're good at talking about a change management process, but they're not all that good at actually thinking about it with the lens of musculoskeletal disease, and the types of things that we see regularly when we're looking at it from a physio perspective. So let's have a talk about this pre-contemplation stage. Supervisors, superintendents, managers, they're all busy. They're really busy people, and a lot of time they see no reason to change. Everything that we're talking through in trying to make their workplace better is just going to take them more time and take them away from what they think is the most important thing that they should be doing at that point. So we've got to think through how we can move them through this stage. Key things here, are, and we've talked about it and we've heard today, I guess, this idea of a top-down approach, and that's really important, and Newmont in particular do this really well. They're really good at highlighting when things have been achieved, and they're really good at being able to showcase what has been done and to share it across the business. But we've got to find a way to find some common ground with our supervisors to work out how we're going to make them look good. If we don't do that, we're not going to achieve anything. The easiest thing for them to do is to do nothing, and it's something that we do see across a lot of workplaces, particularly the ones that we have worked with and that we're new to working with. So I'm going to tell another quick story about how we try to approach this change management piece that I do talk about with a lot of our team as they sort of come in. It's a story about how we create, I guess, human nature and how as people, when we decide to commit to something, it's really hard for us to back out of that commitment. So this is one around child safety and vehicle safety. It was a study that was done in the US, and they looked at two different suburbs where they were trying to, it's a sales piece, trying to create a process for change, I guess. So they went to one suburb and they said, right, we've had a lot of children that have been exposed to vehicles here. We've had a couple of kids that have been hit by vehicles. We think it's a real problem. What we'd like to do is we'd like to put a billboard in your front yard that says, slow down, look out for our kids. How many people do you think were happy to put the billboard up in their front yard? Very few, yeah. A billboard in your front yard, that's a big step, So they were saying, look, do you really care about kids? Well, we care, but we don't care that much. So they went to another suburb and they had the same conversation, saying, look, we've had children interacting with vehicles, we've had a couple of kids that have been hit. What we'd like to do is we'd like to put a sticker on your wheelie bin. And when you put your wheelie bin out on the verge, it's going to say, slow down, look out for our kids. How many people were happy to do that, do you think? Almost everyone. Almost everyone's happy to make that commitment. Then they went back about a month later and they said, oh, look, it's been really good on the days when the bins are out. But the bins aren't out every day. So can we put a big sticker on the back of your car? Because your cars are out most of the time when the kids are out, and then we're going to see it more often. And of course, those people that said yes to the wheelie bin, they agreed. They said, it's a problem, we're happy to commit to it. They then said, well, no worries, we'll put the sticker on our car. So they did big stickers on the back of cars. Now, a month later, they went back to those same people and they said, all right, the wheelie bins are out a couple of days a week, the cars are out, when you guys are driving around, but a lot of the time, you're out of the suburb when kids are being picked up and other stuff is going on, and so we need something more. We'd like to put a billboard in your front yard. Would you be keen to commit to that? And there again, a lot of people then said yes. And the reason that they said yes is because you'd taken them on the journey, but you'd also got them to agree to something little first. And they said yes, not because they wanted the billboard in their front yard, but because they didn't want to go against what they'd originally committed to, which was to say that children and vehicles is a problem and we want to care for our kids, and we don't want to go against what we'd already started. And so we've got to think about that when we're engaging supervisors and superintendents on this journey of workplace safety to try to enact change. Sometimes we've got to use what tools are at our disposal too, and yeah, we love using technology. Things that are shiny and new are always pretty cool to use. But I think the key thing here is they don't tell us what we don't already know. I think everyone looking at these slides would go, well, the person working overhead is more likely to have a shoulder injury than the person that's working at between shoulder and waist height. Certainly as a physio, I should be able to stand up in front of a group of people and get them to believe that that's a high-risk problem. But the thing is, me standing up in front of a group of supervisors and superintendents talking about a risk of working overhead versus a video that has a lot more red than green, the video says way more than what they will believe out of me. And so that's the way that we use technology. We use the SOTA technology, SOTA task stuff. There's lots of different things. We've been using wearable tech for more than a decade. The SOTA stuff we like because it doesn't take you don't have to put anything on. It's really simple and easy to use. So now we get into the contemplation stage, and where a supervisor is thinking about it, but they're not really sure. And here it's about trying to make sure that we can sit down with them and give them a plan. Make sure that we can get access to the workplace, access to the people actually doing the job, and have those conversations. And it's out of those conversations that we'll get those solutions. But we've got to engage the highest level first to get that permission. Because once we've got that permission, then we've got the ability to gather that information and do something about it. The proactive versus reactive, and we talk a lot about trying to make sure that we're proactive. I think here the other thing to make sure that you do is to not miss out on the reactive opportunity. When someone does injure themselves, even if you're not working in that work area, get out there, go and have a look at it, because there's a very clear memory of the fact that that task and that event will cause a problem, injures a worker, and it'll have an impact on the business. So don't miss out on the reactive opportunity while you're trying to be proactive at the same time. And I guess deliver them a process so they don't have to think about it. They trust the process and they know it's going to work. Preparation phase of change, at this point in time, they're ready, but they don't know what they're going to do. So how do we take them through this? Well, at this point, we've got to work on that business case. Can we achieve a return on investment with what they're doing and put it in a language that's going to make sense to them? There's no point in just playing on heartstrings. I'd love to say that the fact that someone got hurt is going to make a difference to a business, but realistically, if it can make them more money, they're more likely to invest in it. Organise stakeholder meetings with the people that need to be in the room. There's no point in having a stakeholder meeting with people that aren't the decision makers in it, nor the people that can actually put the actions in place that are agreed to. If you're in a meeting and everyone's going, look, we're going to give Joe that job, but he's not there, it's going to be pretty difficult to hold Joe to account as a result of that meeting. Think about budgets and timings. There are certain big things that you might be wanting to get money spent on. Understand when the CapEx budgets need to go in and align some of these meetings with the timings of that. Because if your timing's out, the money might not be there. And then work with your suppliers in order to be able to sort of find ways that can be creative to be able to achieve change. So one of the things that we've found really important can be trying to get them into the room when we're doing those stakeholder meetings too. Can we engage them? Can we get them in? Can they come with different things that they're doing with different clients as well to help us to try to achieve that change and to try to get that to be embedded? Action. Here's the opportunity, I guess, where we get to make the rubber hit the road, but it's also the part where a lot of businesses fall down. So we've sat down and we've gone, right, well, we're keen to put something in place here, but are we going to put the work into making sure that it's going to work? It is really hard to see these slides from here. Yeah. So we've gone and actually organised to have new equipment come in. Have we made sure that equipment has has been properly tested. How do we go through the commissioning process? How do we make sure that it can come in? Have we updated our policies and procedures for people to follow to make sure that when it does get put in place, that people are actually going to use it properly? Have we put the training in? And have we worked out how to be able to do that? And have we made sure that when we're putting this control in place that it doesn't introduce any other risks? And have we made sure that we've communicated that to all levels? Because this is something to celebrate. From a business perspective, once we put a control in place, this is something that we should be talking about to everyone that is keen to listen. And by doing so, we create momentum for that next change to be able to occur at the same time. For the slide before, I think down the bottom, I had a mention about a Kaizen approach. And I think that's it's a really good approach to just talk about quickly. We've seen that approach at a few of the different mining companies that we work for. And it's an approach where the business will actually take people out of role and sit them in a room for 3, 4, 5 days and say, right, well, you're going to come with this problem. We're going to have done the research beforehand, but you don't get to walk out of that room and go back to your normal job until you've fixed it. The difference of this is, and this type of approach, there's a lot of investment that goes into taking people out of role to be able to achieve it. Taking people out of role with different people from different backgrounds, making sure that, one of the most successful ones I think we've seen was ones where we're looking at hand injuries and pinch points. We actually had a number of boiler makers that were taken out of role to be part of the Kaizen approach. And so they were able to build any sort of guarding as part of the process at the time. We've had boiler makers are a pretty key one actually to bring in sometimes because they can fashion up tools for you to test. Not ones that are necessarily engineered perfect, but at least for you to test a concept to see if they're going to work. And if you do a bit of pre-planning to get gear in to try to sort of test it all out and work out what is going to work going forwards. So I think a Kaizen approach can be a really good one, but it's obviously quite expensive to pull people out of role for. But it does show you that when you can get people to focus on something, you can achieve a fair bit at a point in time. From an accountability perspective from Newmont, this sort of just goes through the steps that we take. Obviously, initially we do a fair bit of research, so that's just making sure that we can walk into a workplace and sound like we know what we're talking about. So to be able to walk in and go, okay, here's the types of injuries that we've seen in processing, for example, over time. Here are the type of tasks that we've seen them with and that we can start the conversation about what we're going to do. Then we have our first stakeholder meeting, which is really about, again, that process of getting permission to go and access the workforce. And for the next period of time, then we go and spend our time immersed in that workforce, looking at the job dictionary, updating that, having a look at the high-risk tasks and getting that information from them themselves. Once we've done that, we go back and we have that second stakeholder meeting with the decision makers in place, and we sit down and we go, right, what are we going to do now? What decisions are you happy to make? And we try to help them understand that hierarchy of control that's been talked about and try to get them to put the best preventative option in place. But sometimes we can't sell the billboard straight away. Sometimes we've actually got to get them to begin with the wheelie bin. And maybe, unfortunately, there needs to be another couple of injuries to occur before they'll actually invest in the billboard. But yeah, such is life. Then once it's in place, we've got to hold them to account. At Newmont, we use a program called Enable-On to be able to hold them to account. In other businesses, there's a similar thing. But once those actions have been agreed, what's really important is trying to use what a business uses to hold their people to account to be able to make sure that the change is actually enacted. Because just sending out some minutes from a meeting and trying to talk to them again about what they might have agreed to a month, 6 weeks, 10 weeks later, when they've got a busy part of the business that they're trying to run, if there's no other way to hold them to account, then it's really hard to get that change to occur. And then once we've got them in place, then it's really important to try to maintain them. Go back out into the work area, have a look at what has been in place. Is it still working? Did it achieve what we thought it was going to achieve? Have we introduced any new hazards that we didn't think of when we originally put it in? And if we've got some momentum in that work area that we've achieved a change and that everyone's excited about that change, let's actually use that momentum to then change the next thing. Don't miss that opportunity now that you've got some momentum that way. And lastly, what I wanted to finish on is just a couple of examples of actually, cases where the rubber has hit the road down at Newmont. So this first one was a really simple one. It was a problem identified by the workforce in the gold room, where they were complaining about a lot of the needle gun work that was being done and how it was, one, they had to rotate people through, and the impact that it was having on their forearms and arms. So it was a simple one to sort of work through, to trial a couple of different needle guns, and in the end we found one that was not only less vibration but also could get the job done quicker, didn't require the rotation that it required before, and we coupled that with some anti-vibration gloves that made a big difference. So a simple one in terms of investment on, not only did it reduce the risk exposure, but it also produced a productivity gain, which is an easy one to have a conversation with a workplace about. This next one was a really simple one. We have these gas cylinders everywhere. They're really heavy. A bear hug lift is not a really safe lift to be able to do, but there are just some simple, cheap tools out there that can make a big difference. And it was really just a highlighting in that sometimes there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there that doesn't take a lot of effort. This last one was one that took a bit of effort. So we were asked to go out and do a whole body vibration assessment on the buggies that are used through the village. And if anyone's ever spent time in these villages and had a look at these buggies, they're not great. They're pretty well what you'd drive around a golf course in. And some of the people that drive them probably think that they're on a golf course at times, I reckon. But the way that we approached this, so we did the original assessment, there's not much that can be done to that particular buggy. So instead we engaged the suppliers to bring in a few different types. We spent some time getting both the vibration data but also the qualitative and quantitative data from the users that were going to use them to come up with what the solution was. And we made a procurement change that we're now rolling out across the sites with a better buggy that's got better suspension, and we should see then a reduction in the risk exposure then as a result. So the key things, leaving a bit of time for questions, that I wanted to really talk about was just be careful what you measure. One of the things that we learnt really early on was that what we measure can create a behaviour, and by changing what we measure, it can create a better behaviour, which was for us the outcome of being able to achieve more examples of cases where we were able to get that change to be enacted. So think about what you're measuring as a business and whether that's creating the behaviour change that you're after. Be comfortable with selling risk. Sometimes our job is to be able to make people really understand what that risk is. Turn it into a business case where you can, and try to use metrics that are actually going to mean something to the business, not just the bit about we don't want to hurt people, but actually try and find a way that it's going to make them money. They're the easiest ones to sell. And try not to sell the billboard straight away. Sometimes you do need to start with the wheelie bin or even the sticker before you can eventually get to there. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that, Greg. A couple of quick-fire questions.
Yeah.
Firstly, how can you ensure sustainability in a program following implementation? How do you keep the momentum going to ensure continued support from decision makers? You'd expect it to be just money, but are there any other drivers?
Yeah, look, I think, we talked about the different work areas being different, but a strategy coming from the top down makes a big difference. So the slide that I put up for Newmont, for example, where we had a few of the different work areas, we've got that chart for every work area, and we're gradually working through them all at different stages. And that's something that's brought up in their meetings that they have internally. So when they're talking about what they're doing for the month as part of their dashboards, it's one of those ones that's brought up and socialised in that type of space. So if you've got the support from the top down, and if you can make a process that's visual and is discussed in those scenarios, then you'll maintain momentum. Would be the key.
Assuming you've got the support from the top down. On that, what can we do to give leadership a bit of a push without pushing them over the edge when you feel that their commitments are dropping against all the other competing priorities?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You've got to find a way to make them look good, ultimately. So if you can find some way to and it might be, look good in the short term, it might be to actually help them progress their career. I mean, ultimately, some people, that's what drives them. And so if you can find a way to sort of tag it to that, to make them look good, great. I'd love to say that every person in a management role cares about their people. Sometimes they just care about looking good. So if you can find a way to achieve either of those, good, but not get in the way as well. So I talked about getting permission to go and engage the workplace. Part of that permission is also making sure you're not going to get in the way. So it might be to sort of say, look, we want to come in and we want to spend some time, and they might go, look, for the next 6 weeks, we are flat tack, or we've got a shutdown coming up, or just don't do it now, do it then. So it's that negotiation piece as well, to try to make sure you get your time
So a
right.
degree of emotional intelligence, reading the room and working out when the right time is to act.
100%.
And empowerment is the key. That seems to be the theme. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's not about us. It's actually about them, and then making them look good as part of the process.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your time, Greg. Let's give him a big round of applause. Appreciate it.